Your Ford's engine is carrying around years of filth that is quietly strangling performance, increasing fuel consumption, and setting the stage for repairs that will cost you thousands. The worst part is most owners never see it coming because the damage happens somewhere they never think to look. I have been wrenching on Fords for over 15 years, and I have pulled apart engines that looked perfectly clean on the outside, but were absolutely packed with carbon deposits, sludge, and intake valve buildup on the inside. The owners of those trucks had no idea. They were changing their oil on schedule, using quality fuel, and doing everything right. But there was one thing they were not doing that would have prevented all of it. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how a liquid that costs about $1 is capable of dissolving a decade of Ford engine filth in minutes. I have done this myself on customer trucks and on my own personal F-150, and the before and after results are something you have to see to believe. We are talking about rough idle turning smooth, hesitation under acceleration disappearing, throttle response sharpening up like the truck is brand new, and in some cases, a noticeable bump in fuel economy. But I'm also going to explain exactly why this buildup happens, which Ford engines are the most vulnerable, and what you can do right now to stop it from coming back. Understanding the cause is just as important as knowing the fix. So let's get into it. First, you need to understand what's actually going on inside your engine and why this problem is so common on Ford vehicles, particularly the EcoBoost lineup. Ford's direct injection technology, which powers the 2.7-liter EcoBoost, the 3.5-liter EcoBoost, and the 5.0-liter Coyote, is one of the most powerful and efficient systems ever put into a truck engine. But it has a fundamental design flaw that Ford never publicized during the buying process. In older port-injected engines, fuel was sprayed directly onto the back of the intake valves every time the engine cycled. That constant fuel wash acted as a natural cleaning agent, keeping the valves free of carbon deposits. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough that most port-injected engines went well past 150,000 miles without ever developing serious carbon issues. Direct injection changed everything. In a direct injected engine, fuel bypasses the intake valves entirely and gets sprayed directly into the combustion chamber. That sounds like an upgrade, and in terms of power and efficiency, it absolutely is. But those intake valves no longer get that regular fuel bath to clean them. Instead, oily crankcase vapors from the positive crankcase ventilation system circulate through the intake and coat the backs of the valves with every single combustion cycle. Over time, that coating bakes on under the intense heat of the engine. It hardens into a thick, carbonized layer that can reduce the valve opening by 40, 50, even 60% in severe cases. I've personally pulled intake manifolds off high-mileage EcoBoost engines and found carbon deposits on the intake valves so thick you could chip them off with a screwdriver. These deposits do not just restrict airflow. They disrupt the precise air-fuel mixture the engine computer is trying to maintain, cause incomplete combustion, throw off idle quality, and increase fuel consumption because the engine has to work harder to produce the same power output. When trucks feel sluggish, hesitate on acceleration, idle roughly, or have noticeably less power than when they were new, carbon deposits are almost always part of the diagnosis. And here's the thing, Ford will never send you a recall notice about this. They will never call you in for a free cleaning. A proper professional walnut blasting service, which is the gold standard for carbon removal, costs between $400 and $700 at most shops. That is a legitimate service, and it works extremely well. But there is a method that costs almost nothing, takes about 15 minutes, and when done correctly, delivers real, measurable results, particularly for mild to moderate buildup. That method uses distilled water. Before you dismiss that as crazy, hear me out, because the science behind it is legitimate. And this is not some YouTube trick invented last week. The technique has roots in early aviation engine maintenance and has been used in industrial applications for decades. The principle is called carbon blasting or steam cleaning, and here is exactly how it works. When water contacts a superheated surface like the inside of your engine's combustion chamber and intake ports, It flash vaporizes into steam almost instantly. That rapid expansion creates a micropressure event on the surface of the carbon deposits. Steam is particularly effective because it gets into every crack and crevice, penetrating layers of carbon that liquid cleaners struggle to reach. The expansion physically fractures the carbon layer, breaking it apart. The combustion process then burns away the loosened particles or exhausts them through the tailpipe. Distilled water is the critical detail here. Do not use tap water. Tap water contains dissolved minerals, particularly calcium and magnesium, that will leave deposits of their own inside your engine. Distilled water is pure H2O with nothing else in it. It vaporizes cleanly, leaves no residue, and costs less than $1 per gallon at any grocery store. 1 gallon is more than enough to treat your engine multiple times. Now let me walk you through exactly how to do this properly, because the technique matters a great deal. Doing it wrong can cause a hydrolock situation where water accumulates in a cylinder faster than it can be expelled, preventing the piston from completing its stroke and potentially bending a connecting rod. That is an engine-destroying failure, and it happens when people rush the process or use too much water too fast. Done correctly, this is completely safe. Done carelessly, it can cause serious damage. So pay close attention to every step. Start by warming your engine up fully before doing anything else. Drive the truck for at least 10 to 15 minutes so the engine reaches full operating temperature. This is not optional. You need the combustion chambers, the intake valves, and all the internal surfaces at their maximum operating heat. A cold engine will not generate the steam effect you are looking for. A fully warmed engine will vaporize the water almost the instant it contacts those surfaces. Once the engine is fully warmed up, park on a level surface and let it idle. Do not turn it off. You will be performing this procedure with the engine running at idle, which is about 600 to 800 RPM on most Ford engines. Higher RPM during the introduction phase increases the risk of pulling in too much water too quickly. Next, locate your air intake. On most EcoBoost F-150s and Explorer models, the air filter box is accessible with minimal effort. You are going to introduce the distilled water downstream of the mass airflow sensor. The mass airflow sensor sits inside your intake tube and measures the air entering the engine. Spraying water directly at that sensor can damage it or cause incorrect readings. Introduce the water downstream of the sensor between the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body. Use a small spray bottle or a meat baster to introduce the water in short, controlled bursts directly into the intake. Do not pour water in freely. You want a fine mist or very small squirts introduced every 3 to 5 seconds. Watch the engine RPM as you do this. If the RPM starts to drop significantly, you have introduced too much water at once. Stop and let the engine recover. A slight RPM drop of 50 to 100 RPM is normal and expected. A severe drop means water is accumulating faster than the engine can process it. Continue this process slowly for about 10 to 15 minutes, introducing small amounts of water consistently. You will notice white smoke coming from the exhaust. This is exactly what you want to see. That white smoke is steam carrying carbon particles out of the engine. The more buildup you have, the heavier the smoke will be early in the process. As you continue, the smoke typically lightens and eventually clears, which indicates the deposits are burning off. After you have finished introducing the water, rev the engine gently to about 2,500 RPM a few times. This helps expel any remaining moisture and burns off any loose carbon still sitting in the combustion chambers. Keep the engine running for another 5 minutes at idle, then take the truck for a drive and push it through its full RPM range a few times under moderate load. This final step is important because it uses heat and combustion pressure to finish clearing any loosened deposits that did not fully exit during the treatment. The results you can expect depend entirely on how much buildup your engine has accumulated. On trucks with 30,000 to 60,000 miles, the improvement is often subtle. You might notice a slightly smoother idle and marginally better throttle response. The real benefit at lower mileage is prevention. You are removing early-stage deposits before they become severe. On trucks with 80,000 miles or more that have never been treated, the improvement can be dramatic. I have had customers come back after doing this on their high-mileage EcoBoost F-150s, reporting that the truck felt like it had gained 20 horsepower. That is not an exaggeration. When you are removing deposits that have been choking your intake valves for a decade, the airflow improvement is significant and you feel it immediately under acceleration. Now, there are a few important things you need to know about what this treatment can and cannot do. Distilled water treatment is highly effective at addressing light to moderate carbon buildup on intake valves and combustion chamber surfaces. It is not a replacement for walnut blasting on engines with severe, thick deposits that have built up over many years without any maintenance. If your engine is already running rough, misfiring, or throwing intake-related trouble codes, you may have buildup beyond what water treatment can address. In those cases, a professional induction service or walnut blasting is the correct solution. Think of the water treatment as something you do regularly to prevent the problem from reaching that point, not necessarily as the cure for a decade of complete neglect. This treatment is safe to perform every 15,000 to 20,000 miles as part of your regular maintenance routine. Doing it consistently means the deposits never have the opportunity to build up to the severe levels that require expensive professional intervention. Some Ford owners do a lighter version of this treatment every oil change interval. That's perfectly fine and only makes the job easier each time. There is one additional step that pairs extremely well with the water treatment, and it costs almost nothing extra. After you finish the water introduction phase, and while the engine is still at operating temperature, introduce about a tablespoon of quality high detergent motor oil into the intake the same way you introduce the water. The oil vapor coats the freshly cleaned intake valves with a thin protective layer that slows the reaccumulation of deposits. Some shops use this as a final step after professional walnut blasting for the same reason. It is not mandatory, but it extends the time between treatments. You should also know that some Ford owners take this approach a step further and use seafoam motor treatment introduced through the intake instead of, or in addition to, distilled water. Seafoam is a petroleum-based solvent product with a long track record in the industry. When introduced through the intake in a controlled manner, it serves a similar purpose to distilled water, but adds a solvent component that can help dissolve oil-based deposits that water alone struggles to break apart. Seafoam costs about $10 to $12 per can at any auto parts store. You do not need the entire can for a single treatment. The combination of distilled water followed by a controlled seafoam introduction is a technique that many independent Ford mechanics use regularly and recommend to their customers. Whether you use just distilled water or combine it with seafoam, the fundamental process is the same. Warm the engine, introduce the fluid in a controlled way past the MAF sensor, be patient, and take a drive afterward to finish the job. What matters most is that you do it consistently, and you do it before the buildup reaches the point where it takes a shop and several $100s to correct. Here's the reality of owning a direct injection Ford engine in 2024 and beyond. Carbon buildup is not a defect. It is an inherent consequence of the technology, but it is a manageable consequence. The owners who understand this and take 15 minutes every 15,000 miles to address it are the same owners whose EcoBoost engines are pushing 200,000 miles without a significant mechanical repair. The owners who ignore it are the ones coming into the shop with rough-running engines, P0300 misfires, and quotes for major work that could have been avoided for the cost of a gallon of distilled water. Take an hour this weekend, grab a bottle of distilled water from the grocery store, and run through this process on your Ford. If your truck has more than 60,000 miles and has never had any kind of induction service, you will feel the difference. If you found this information valuable, hit subscribe and the notification bell because we cover the kind of practical Ford maintenance information that dealerships will not tell you and that owners actually need to know. Drop a comment telling me what mileage your Ford is at and whether you have ever dealt with carbon buildup symptoms. I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next one.